So I just want to extend a warm welcome to everybody. Thanks for coming out. I know it's tough to fit things in between classes and such. In addition to people here, we also have folks online, so I want to let the folks online, we're getting started here in about a minute. On behalf of the EdTech Network, I want to say thank you. The EdTech Network partners to drive innovation, and we have a lot of different activities throughout the year for students, faculty, and staff to get involved in programs that help drive innovation, and particularly around AI and machine learning. So IBM is a key partner of the EdTech Network, and we're doing a lot of work with Watson. We had a Nittany Watson challenge last year, and we have another challenge coming up this year in January. So I would encourage everyone to check out the EdTech Network website. The URL is down here, edtechnetwork.psu.edu. Okay, that's my little plug. Again, I want to say a thanks, and I'm going to turn it over to Rich to introduce today's speaker.
Thanks, Darren. For everyone, I'm Rich Pruitt. I'm the on-campus IBMer here at Penn State, and it's my pleasure to welcome as a keynote speaker here Ben Amaba. Ben is a worldwide executive in IBM who focuses on the creation of partnership between industry, academia, government, and the blend of those things. And he's going to talk to you a lot about different opportunities. He's an amazing speaker, and with that, I'm going to pass it on to Ben.
Thank you, Rich. Thank you, Darren.
And by the way, if there are any questions throughout, raise your hand, and Clay or I will find you and hand you the mic.
Excellent. Yeah, so let's make it interactive. And I want to point out Amy and Bridget, raise your hands, because they're going to help me in the presentation that they don't know, right? Okay. Yeah. So we definitely want to be interactive. I was talking to this side of the room. Huge potential for you today. And I'm going to make it really easy, right? Because at other universities, and we've done this about 50 times around the world, and you'll always ask me, well, why am I here, and why is it important to me, right? That's the number one thing. And some of you have pieced that together. But more importantly is, well, how are you going to help me, Ben Amaba, or how are you going to help me, Amy, Bridget, Darren? Very important, right? Because we're going to kind of guide you through that. And the last thing is this, so what do I do next, right? So what do I do next? Because what you never want is to hear a speaker and say, hey, that's great, we join hands, sing Kumbaya, but I didn't know what to do after that, right? So I am going to make it interactive, and I'm going to go through the why. Why are you here today? And there's components that you may or may not understand. How are you going to help me? And what elements, like being a professional in moving your career forward, and why that's so important in some of the natural disasters that have occurred when people weren't professional about it. So we're going to get started. One of the interesting things my parents always tell me is I've actually got more initials behind my name than in my name, right? But she says, my mother particularly, is do not measure the success of an individual like pork by the length of their tail, right? Right? So the quality of the pork. But so why do I say that? Because I will learn more from you today than you'll learn from me, okay? So I want this to be interactive. It's amazing how many individuals I learn from. In fact, I was telling this side of the audience, there was a 6-year-old a year ago in Memphis, Tennessee, that actually has started their own company because I learned more from this individual, and you'll see him on stage here through video, than I could actually share with him. So do not think that you can't give more knowledge to me than I can give to you. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, so why are we here today? Since 2000, there are 52% of the companies have been either acquired, ceased to exist, or bankrupt. You guys imagine that? That means 50% of those companies, those institutions that were out there. Now, what's interesting, as you sit in this room, 72% of you, right, whether you're with institutions, a sole proprietor, or even academia, are going to be disrupted yourself. It's going to change the life, right? Raise your hand if you still rent movies at Blockbuster. Raise your hand. Oh, man. How many of you guys have seen an Encyclopedia Britannica salesperson at your dorm door lately? Right? It's happening, and it's happening faster. But what's interesting about these concepts, that 54% of the leaders in institutions today are saying that these competitors are not going to come from my industry, right? So you look at both sides of the coin. You got to be able to look broad as well as deep, and don't anticipate it's your competitor like Uber, right, in the taxi industry or transportation industry, of course, doesn't own one single car, right? And that's what you're able to do today. So the message behind this is there's going to be a disruptor and disruptee. Who would you rather be, right? And it's coming in the next 3 years. So a lot of the juniors and seniors are going to be in that position because your employers, or if you're a sole proprietor, or if you're going to stay in academia, they're going to say, what's your perspective to be the disruptor versus the disruptee? Now, why is this happening? Because 274,000 businesses are being launched every day. 274,000. Me, myself, just coming through audiences like this, launch 40 to 50 every time I leave every month. University of Houston, Friday, 2 students launched a company by Sunday. By Sunday, right? That's going to be competitive. Now, what's interesting, the people that are sitting in the positions of power are getting threatened, right? Because you understand the digital world. And you're changing the business model. And you're doing them concurrently. That's amazing to me. That means you don't need a huge gas station. You don't need a huge facility. And you don't even have to be located in a specific city, right? Now, what's actually tearing them apart or giving you an advantage, right? They built these silos. Silos of data, silos of system, and silos of people. Now, with your mentality, with diversity and inclusion, you don't have those silos that we've built in traditional industries, right? And of course, the second point that makes total sense to me is they're looking to close the gap in skills and what you know. That's your value. That's another reason that there's these external threats. You know something they don't know. So I would tell you that you better give a round of applause to your professors, because we don't necessarily think as students that they're giving something that we have an edge on. You think that, hey, I've got to be a freshman, sophomore, junior, senior. No, what they're giving you is the key to the castle, right? And the final one that we see is people aren't reacting fast enough. I can almost guarantee you about 30% of you are actually going to take the what and how and actually act on it. 30% of you. About 72% of you are going to pontificate on it, unfortunately, and you're going to miss an opportunity that says, I should have, I would have, and I could have, right? So don't be. Now, some of you are going to do it, but I don't know which ones, but try to stay out of that pocket, right? In fact, I'll give you a free T-shirt at the back to remind each and every one of you, and take 2 if you need to, so that you can rotate them, but don't be one of those 72%, right? Don't fall into that. So, even IBM had to change.
Wait for me, girl, wait for me. Wait for me, girl, wait for me. Wait for me, world, wait for me. Wait for me, world, wait for me. Wait for me. Better keep up till the sun goes down. Don't chase that moon till the blood come out. Wait for me, butterfly, wait for me. I'm only trying to set you free. Wait for me, problems, wait for me. I'm only human, so let me be. Let me be. Better keep up till the sun goes down. Don't chase that moon till the blood come out. Better keep up till the sun goes down.
Right? So when I get in here and why I'm so passionate and specific around this is because it's happening to us. It's happening to Rich. It's happening to Bridget. It's happening to Amy right now. So I'm not selling you right now to drink the Kool-Aid we didn't personally drink, right? We ourselves have to transform every single day. So we can give you artifacts, assets, roadmaps, and even systems to kind of navigate these turbulent waters, right? Because again, if you recall, 72% of you in the next 3 years are going to be disrupted, and 54% of your competition is going to come from nowhere you expected. So why do we look at this? In 2015, it became really, really apparent that without closing the gap between government and universities in the private sector, none of us were innovating, right? So since 2015, we've been to about 100 universities and spawned over 400 new startups, entrepreneurs, even within institutions, because we spoke to you, got your skills and knowledge, reacted quicker, and gave you a system that you could actually work on, right, without the capital cost. So and I try to keep all this. This was coming from the Systems Engineering Research Center. So it exists. So who down the street is actually doing something about it? And I know Penn State can compete with these universities, right? True story, when I was up there in the Boston area, I was late for class, and I was running, and if you ever know Cambridge, the grocery stores, which I don't quite understand, have 13 items or less in a line. That's the fast line. You guys have that 13 items or less? It's 13, or is it 15 or 10? It's 10, which makes sense to me. Why 13? I've not been able. Yeah, 13, and they know something I don't know. But I'm in the line, late for class. You know, the professor shuts his door and locks it, and I know you guys have heard this because it's happened to every one of us up there. I said, hey, you know, I've got 15. I can get it through. I'll even pay you another $10. Just get me through. And she goes, you're either from Harvard or MIT. And I said, well, that's offensive, right? We're your customers. And I said, well, you know, just so I understand why those two schools. And they said, you're from Harvard and can't count, or you're from MIT and can't read, so get out of my line, right? But here's an interesting point. They finally agreed on something, right? That there's a chasm between universities, industry, and government, and they're making a move on it, right? Just in artificial intelligence alone, Harvard Business Review is saying, I want to work with industry and government to accelerate my path. I want to be one of those 30% that's going to disrupt the market. That's what the graduates are saying. MIT is saying the same thing, right? Use startups and academia to validate and verify big company IBM. Because of that, we've endowed them with a couple of professorships, and that's why you've got to talk to your professors and say, hey, I think I've got a plan here. If you work with me, because you're about to be industry, academia, take this journey with Ben and the other industries, and let's compete. And this isn't just on a local level, right? The country of Canada did a study with us, and they said the single largest thing that they're having a problem closing, right, is between government, industry, and academia, right? Does this make sense, guys? Why you are so important to me that I've got to take a journey, but I need skills, I need somebody to close the gap, and I need somebody to be responsive. You guys can throw in a sweatshirt and then figure that problem out faster than I can define it. Why does this matter? This is very, 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 very important. If you're just going to build a product for the sake of building a product, you're going to do okay in the first column, but you're not going to do great. If you're going to produce a service with that product, you're going to do better, but you're not going to do great. If you create a technology and just play with this technology for the sake of playing with the technology, you're going to do better, but you're not going to do great. But if you become a network orchestrator, where you yourself can work with industry, academia, IBM, and other companies, even startups, you're going to control the maximum amount of money that you can earn, right? Now, what's interesting, people haven't figured it out. Although we've done this 58 times just in the U.S. and maybe 42 times overseas, only 2% of the entrepreneurs, startups, institutions, and academia are figuring this out. 2%. So there's a market availability at 98%. So you guys can catch the wave now, or you can wait to look for a job later while somebody else is leading the pack. Right? Critical. By the way, blockchain, and we've been talking to Darren about that, that could be a pivotal area where you set up a blockchain, right? Most people associate it with Bitcoin, but I think they're valued, their currency, each currency is now valued at $7,000. How could that be them and that can't be you? Okay. So I won't beat that dead horse. But it's 98% of the market still hasn't done it, and you have an opportunity, now that you've seen these slides, to go out there and make it happen. Now, what's interesting too, right, this digital transformation, these models that are being born are actually STEM-oriented, right? But there's nothing that prohibits us from actually leveraging other countries. Most people say, well, the U.S. is behind. No, it's not behind. You've just got other team members that you've got to leverage, right? So the resources are out there if you collaborate, right? Just this past 2 weeks, the United States put another $200 million out there to fund programs like you. Who does not need $200 million? Raise your hand if you don't need it, right? We all need it. And what does that mean? So I actually think that technical competency is important, and I've said this before, but professional responsibility is fundamental. And somebody asked me, well, does education matter? Absolutely, right? Because you remember the third disruption was we can't find the gaps in skills. So the more education you get, right, your value over time increases. But being a professional, just like the network, is the essential criteria, right? So the university is going to teach you the technical competency, but experience and mentorship is going to teach you professional responsibility. That means when you make this, and you'll see a slide from Scott Adams, they used to tell me, at least when I was in university, that if you had a goal, if you were passionate, you might get lucky. That's not the way it works today. You guys aren't in here because of luck, right? And by the way, if you set on one goal, you could get caught in making buggy whips. So instead of having a goal, you better have a system, right? Instead of being just passionate, because you can be passionate about the wrong things when people evolve, right? You got to be positive and have the energy to expend that. So we'll talk about the new system that's out there. Now, what's happening too, just like the legal profession, the medical profession, even CPAs and engineers, there's a profession that you can go after this, right? So any of you guys making technical solutions and creating that network orchestration, you can actually be a professional today, leading you to more earnings and leading you to make an impact. That's huge. That was started in 2015, and let me give a kudos to you, because guess what university figured this out? Anybody would guess? Darren? Penn State! Wow! Right? So the ability that you get the mentorship here, and why am I here instead of going down the road to maybe some of my Boston colleagues, is you've got an edge that you guys have to be sure you take a leverage, right, to take advantage of. Dr. Phil LaPlante actually designed this because as our daily lifestyle continues to use software and computers, we become more dependent on it. And how many of you guys have used an app on your phone and it just doesn't work and you got to delete it? Is that not frustrating, right? So now that's professional responsibility. You want to make sure that your innovation, whether you're a startup or working for an institution, really does work. And this license isn't saying you're the premier, but you're meeting the minimum standards. You go, I know what to do, right? So think about that. Technical competency is important, but professional responsibility is fundamental as you move forward. And what's the impact to that? These are this last summer. So if somebody doesn't have $20 million or $200 million to get from the U.S. government, I'm sure you don't have $8 billion to squander, right? So a new innovative nuclear power plant, because they weren't professional, just lost $8 billion. Because they weren't really taking consideration. They knew technically what was going on, but they weren't professional about the recommendations and how they designed and built this. And this impacts all of us, because eventually everybody in this room is going to pay for that mistake. And of course, the second one you all know about, right, the nitrous oxide, where they actually use their smarts to defeat devices in the form of computer software to cheat the system. Are you guys familiar with these two? Right? So don't cheat the system. If you walk away from anything that I tell you, don't cheat the system, right? Be ethical, no misconduct, negligence, or incompetency. You've already got the technical skills. Take advantage of it. So here's what they used to tell me: have a goal, be passionate, and you could get lucky. Again, I argue that this isn't about luck. You guys didn't walk here and stumble in here by luck, right? If you did, you guys should be getting up and moving on, right? Don't look at a goal, look at a system to identify the goal at the right time. Because you remember the external disruption is people don't respond quick enough. They're stuck in making buggy whips. You guys have the advantage of not doing that, right? Be passionate, but it's got to be a positive passion. There are so many people today, i.e. the EPA fooling or the nuclear power, they were passionate about it, but they were passionate for the wrong reasons. And this is, I got this from our cartoonist. So your disruption could happen and get your ideas from the most unlikely sources, Scott Adams. So, well, how is Ben, Amaba, and Bridget, and Amy, and Rich going to help us? Right? There's 3 elements that you have to have, and this is from Mary Beth Cantor at Harvard Business School. And she's the one that just kept saying, you know, you didn't read the sign that you couldn't have 15 in the grocery line. Nonetheless, what you really need, here's some of the stipulations of the system, right? You need a system. You need a system to connect content, right? And it's going to be hybrid. You're going to get off data that's on your laptop to unstructured data, images that are out there. The second one is you need a system or a platform to connect what your innovation is going to do. And finally, right, whether you like it or not, artificial intelligence and cognitive computing are on its way. How many of you guys use Siri? Right? Alexa? Yeah, almost. You're getting to the point that you're the 2% that are going to move into the space with the 98%. So a lot of you that raised your hand, you're on that road, that collaboration is going to be key. Again, you can't just build a product, right? You can't just provide a service. You can't even just build technology for the sake of building technology. You've got to get content, you've got to be able to connect, and you've got to collaborate on a network. And I'm going to work backwards, right? IBM's willing to step in here and put our money where our mouth is. Not only are we doing it to ourselves, we've got the IBM's Global Entrepreneur Program, right? And this isn't chump change, right? We want to teach you, give the market what it wants, because 42% of the technical products that are coming out there today mean nothing to anybody. People are actually deleting the app. The second thing that you'll learn today is don't do it alone. My gosh, if academia did it by itself, if industry did it by itself, and government did it by themselves, we'd still be living in the Stone Age, right? The third aspect is you better figure out if you're going to be the disruptor or the disruptee. And how are we going to help you do that? Oh, yeah, here's the other one, 42. Oh, and by the way, I'm going to try to put the links here so you actually see where the data comes from, right? I want to be what they call abductive. Do you guys know what abductive means versus deductive and inductive? Okay, so here's a review. Deductive says Socrates was a man, Socrates was smart, therefore all men are smart. Yeah, yeah, that's right. You don't want to do deductive reasoning. Inductive reasoning is you saw the IBM anthem. We all sing songs. We wear red ties and white shirts and blue suits. Well, that's not true. Otherwise, I messed up my wardrobe, right? So I want to give you the links, which is fact-based, so you can be the 30% that actually act by drilling into the data, right? And that's where you'll come back and say, hey, Ben, I've got another statistic that I'm going to help you with. And it's true. This company actually, they couldn't win the business unless they showed that they had a system, that they could show positive intent, right? And that they had an energy to produce the system, all on IBM's platform, all talking to individuals like Rich, Bridget, and Amy. And that's another thing you guys should do. Not only pick up a T-shirt, but pick up their names, because Rich is here local. Seriously, as a mentor, right? That's going to be critical for you guys to move forward, because he understands design thinking, right? 42% of products do not meet the market needs. But if Rich and Bridget and Amy could show you, well, how do you actually develop a product and make sure the people that are going to buy your product can use your product, right? So this is important in your design thinking. It considers the user and not just the manufacturer. And of course, don't go it alone. Why I keep pointing to these individuals and your professors and Darren that's actually invited us to EdTech Network, right? It's out there, use it. Because what does it mean? If you're mentored, you have twice the probability of success. Twice. Wouldn't you like that edge? That means if I was running a 1-mile race, I could get a half-mile leap in front of my competition. They won't even see that I'm the competitor because I'd have finished and crossed the finish line before they even knew the race was started. 70% of mentored businesses survive the 5+ years, and that's the honeymoon period. If if you can get past 5+ years, you've made it, right? Because it's going to change anyway, but you'll have a system to take a look at it. Course blurter. If you're a startup playing in the enterprise space, you need to align yourself with a giant and become part of its ecosystem. IBM, Richard Gill, thought it was the greatest idea to do. And I'll show you my 6-year-old that thought the same thing. Not my 6-year-old, but a 6-year-old that was sitting there. Okay, of course, create a disruption, right? You're either going to be the disruptee or disruptor, right? You want to be the disruptor. Those 3 main elements, right? Don't do it alone. Make sure you get mentorship, and then pick the right area. Because we're willing to invest in you. And I'm not going to go through all of this, but like we drank our own Kool-Aid to actually transform ourselves, we're ready to give startups, individuals like you today, right? People that will be wearing the T-shirts, 2 of them, to remind you, $120,000 of cloud credits as a starter, builder, or premium. We've done this over 10,000 companies. We do IBM code, and that's the first thing. One thing that we're going to talk about and why the blue mix shirts, I want you to get started and get a user ID in less than 2 minutes or less. Again, 30% of you by the weekend is going to approach Rich and Darren and goes, I've got an idea. Let me show you what it looks like. Okay? Business and developer advocates, just like those IBMers on that back row, they're going to help you build, launch, and scale this business. And what does it look like? Right? What is the end game? We want to build your skill, launch the company, and scale it. But more importantly, you remember Mary Beth Cantor from Harvard, she says, you've got to get the content from somebody, you've got to connect, right? And then you got to collaborate. What's collaboration worth to you? First, the starter edition, it's time, talent, and resource. Your professors that you have, Darren, these guys are incredible talent that they can share with you. But if you need the treasure, and you can prove to me that you have an asset worth selling and worth scaling, it's $1,000 a month for a year or $10,000 a month, the premium edition, to scale. Who doesn't need $1,000, $10,000 a month just to build their dream, right? Because what you don't want is lose $8 billion on nuclear power plant, nor do you want to lose $21 billion in a storm that just came through. Don't wait for the storm. Here are the details, right? You can look it up. Now, in order to get in this, right, you got to show me something, right? You got to show me not just your ideas, but I've got to go from awareness to consideration to preference, and then I'll slot you in here. Preference means I think, I believe your idea. Summarize real quick. Here's the links, so you can link onto them when you get this presentation. $120,000 worth of credit, IBM code to solve problems really quickly, right? Because both government, even academia and industry is looking for a solution, and work with one of your advocates, either here, your professor, or we can assign you an advocate. So that's the how, right? So what are they doing right here? There's gaps in today's hybrid solution. If you remember, the first point Mary Beth Cantor said is, where am I going to get the content, right? Since 1989, IBM has collected over 500,000 patterns of implementations worldwide. You don't have to start from scratch, right? We don't expect you to start from scratch, right? So we're trying to fill out what you can either take software as a service, sell your idea and license it. You can build on the platform itself. Now you don't even need a mainframe to do some of the analytics you used to do, right? So we've removed this element that you had to have a $1 million data center, right? Because now it's open to all the entrepreneurs and innovators. And so far today, nobody's gone over 2 minutes to get their ID. Less than 2 minutes. So if everybody doesn't do this, at least get an ID and take a look at what they're building. Peers like you, from DevOps to big data to mobile integration, it would be, you just wasted your day, right? If you're a part of this Global Entrepreneurship Week, because I'm giving you the why, how can I help you, but it's up to you to act on this, right? And by the way, what's the #1 way young people actually learn how to do things? And I've actually adopted it now. Darren, do you know? Jump in, but it's YouTube. It's YouTube, right? So IBM put the YouTube videos there too as well, right? So there's really no excuse now, right? You can watch it while you're walking across campus. I noticed that from a lot of you, right? Just watch. Okay. MedMeBo. So let's talk about MedMeBo. MedMeBo is a company that's now done IoT applications to our platform. They're medically focused. They're teaching orthopedic surgeons how to be better surgeons on the St. Jude kids in the medical facilities. Originally, it was just by touch, by experience. These individuals, and I'll show you these individuals, they started with these little robots that they used to build for $500, and every restaurant in Memphis wants them for $1,000 to $5,000. But they've used our platform a year ago, and now they're hitting the $1 million mark. So let's take a look at who these individuals are, because when you go home and look in the mirror, they're your peers.
We asked them to solve a real-world problem.
Normally I just don't talk that much in a dinner table, so I just want a TJ bot to keep me company.
This workshop is developing a little bot called TJ Bot, and he talks to you. He shows emotion, and he detects that emotion just through your voice and through talking.
Basically, to use TJ Bot to replace somebody who doesn't want to talk. The students create a TJ Bot. We 3D printed a body and they painted them. They installed all the hardware. We wired them up.
My bot's name is Kilobit.
We have Danny, who doesn't want to talk at a dinner table.
I just ask questions and then he just answers them.
Hello, CJ. Hey, how are you doing? How's it?
Connor, his robot's a prison guard. And then we have Cooper, who has a wizard, because wizards are cool.
CJ, what time is it? It is currently 4:58 p.m.
You see this? You could be doing this for all of Memphis and then all of the world.
And those beautiful shirts they're making are available for you today. So this is a perfect example. Startup company launched by a small university, and their employees range between 6 to about 14 years old. The next classes they're having, so what happens, a college student taught a high school student, we taught a middle school student, who taught the elementary school student. So the elementary school students who, they always tell you if you can tell your child in elementary school what you do, then it makes sense. The elementary school students in April are going to be teaching professionals that have PhDs on how they actually did this. So I think the criteria is you've got to be 4 foot and below on the ride. So now they found privilege versus 4 foot and above to actually teach the class. So remarkable work, and I hope to be seeing you guys in that same video this time next year. Now this isn't just for fun in building TJ bots as well. They're using it in the medical profession, right, to actually save lives and actually prevent the crippling of cancer students. Florida Power and Light, as you've heard, is using this to mitigate the hurricanes, right? 2 big hurricanes in Texas and Florida. They've been planning this since 2005. In 2005, when Hurricane Wilma came through, it was $21 billion worth of damage, 3 times more than the nuclear power plant. And at that time, we had phones, maybe thousands of phones in the South Florida area. Today, they have millions of phones. But now using this technology, IoT to data analytics to Watts and to Bluemix, they can actually get over 9 million people out of the way of a hurricane storm just because some students at the University of Miami said, why aren't we using this innovative technologies? Why do we have to warn on radios and TVs that the storm is coming and redirecting these individuals, right? So when the storm hit in South Florida, they were up and going, unlike Puerto Rico, right, in less than a couple of hours. So it's real. We're investing here. 2 areas, IBM's academic initiative. If you don't understand the industry, we'll help you understand the industry. If you don't understand the skills, we'll help you understand the skills, right? So technical competency, professional responsibility. Technical competency is important but professional responsibility is fundamental. And how much does it cost you today? Not only do you get a free t-shirt, I'm not going to walk away and collect checks from you guys, right? Right? We've drank the Kool-Aid. We see what it can do for humanity. We see what you guys can do. We see your responsiveness. So we're ready to take your faculty and yourself on the journey around the world. So no professor can come to me and say, well, I don't have the curriculum. I've got to build the curriculum. So my seniors, right, you got to wait or you got to come back. No. I can't get to it because on Thanksgiving I'm going to head home, or on Christmas I've got to vacate. Well, no, right? It's available. I don't have a lab to put this in. Well, no, you do, right? And finally, well, how am I going to be recognized for my skill on a global level? And now you do, right? You can become that professional as well as learn that technical competency, right? And if there's anything else we're missing here, let us know, and let's close the gap between government and university and industry. So what I need you guys to do, right, is to act. You already understand the why. You understand how I'm going to help you. And now I'm going to tell you what makes us different and why we're here today. Okay?
This is not a cloud. This is a car protected from storms by an insurance company that knows the weather down to the square block. This is a diamond tracked on a blockchain protected against fraud, theft, and trafficking. This is a financial transaction secure from hacks and threats others can't see. This is a patient's medical history made secure while still available to their doctor at their fingertips. This is an asteroid live streamed to millions of viewers from 220 miles above Earth. This is AI trained by experts in 20 industries, your industry.
Hello.
This is not the cloud you know. This is the IBM Cloud. Built for your business, designed for your data, secure to the core. The IBM Cloud is the cloud for enterprise. Yours.
Okay. So I'm going to take questions. My peers are going to take questions. But if we go back to what Scott Adams said, to be successful today, right, I need a system. I've given you the system. I need positive intent. You're in here because you want to learn something. You want to make a change. All you have to do now is expend the energy. Just like TJ Bot, if you want to make a toy and sell it to restaurants, or Florida Power and Light, if you want to make a difference when a natural disaster occurs in your local community. So with that, I'm going to hand it back to Rich, I guess, to lobby for questions. And I am, again, thankful to be here. And I know you guys are going to do great things. And a year from now, I'm going to see every one of your faces on a video on how you change the world professionally and technically, right? And get your shirt while it's there so you can remember it. Okay, thanks, Rich.
Anybody have any questions? Please raise your hand, and Clay and I will hand the microphone to you and get you an opportunity to ask Ben. All right up front here.
Oh, yeah.
So you were talking about the programs that startups can get into and that you guys work with, like saw Techstars, Startup 500. What's the catch, though?
What's the catch?
Yeah.
Oh, well.
There has to be a trade-off in value that I'm providing towards you.
Great question. We're looking for an asset, a real solution. We're not looking just for an idea. We're looking for you to scale it. So what's in it for us? It's the asset and solution that you'll be able to define faster with a workforce than we can. So the catch is you got to design a real solution. I can't have somebody write on a paper napkin a great idea, right? Because what I want to see, it's not really a catch, but it's an expectation from the world, not just from IBM. You're going to get my awareness, right? I'm going to consider your solution. And now that you've proven that I can drive it, sell it, scale it, IBM's got a solution, a vehicle that can ride on our infrastructure. So it's not a catch, it's more of an expectation. But I think that's a great question because it makes you and I, if we're this far apart, I'm asking you to take 2 steps there and I'll meet you halfway. But that's a great question. What's exactly expected? Oh.
So just a little bit to add to that, because as the EdTech Network, we have to think through this. What does the partnership mean, et cetera? So for all of you that are thinking, wow, I have a really good idea I could leverage Watson with, and I could build something on it. Where IBM benefits is if you're essentially using Watson, then IBM benefits because when Watson gets out into public use, when your company is successful, it's going to benefit from those transactions because you're using Watson. And then IBM will get paid for that usage. So think of your solution sitting on top of that technology. That's where the win-win is. So they're not trying to take your solution, your technology. They just want you to build upon Watson. And I think if you look at all the different AI technologies out there, IBM does the best job in kind of putting together the tools and making it really easy to use when you look at building your solution. So it's ease of use, getting up and running quickly, and then they'll benefit from your long-term success. So it's a win-win for both parties.
Yeah, we want the ability to use data to develop solutions. We want to see if Watson, and it helps us, if Watson is doing something that's not user-friendly or doesn't have the right appropriations, then you've actually taught us how to apply it. It's kind of like driving a vehicle. If we notice that you're using the vehicle in a certain manner and that we can improve on Watson, we want to know that. But at the same time, if we can avoid some of the capital costs that you might be burdened with, it's a win-win situation for both of us. But great question. I'm very rarely does somebody ask that. But you need to know. We're going to be very transparent about this. Great question. Come on, guys. It can't be that easy for you, right? How many of you guys have an idea or have done a mobile application, thought of a mobile caption or data analytics? Raise your hand if you've thought in any category. So we've got one here. We've got one there. They're part of the 30% that's going to get an idea. Nobody's thought of an idea while you were at the university to make your life easier? Okay. There. So see, here's what's, the 30% are starting to appear, right? Now that you've raised your hand, you've got to take that extra step. You owe it to yourself, right? And if you haven't, think about it, right? Darren's got a lot of ideas. They've had the Nittany Challenge and Watson Challenge, but you can get together and say, what would make our life easier? Nobody thought of Uber, right? Just a few people. Now Uber Eats is coming around the corner. There's ideas, and I know it's circling around here and in your head. It's just a matter of executing. You do not want to be one of those people that would have, could have, and should have. That's the worst feeling after a career.
You talked a little bit about disruption and need to be the disruptor, not being the person that's being disrupted. A company like IBM has been around for a long time and has made a number of changes. How does a company like IBM, when we work with a company like IBM, how do we know that IBM is going to continue to be innovative and continue to stay on the edge of things? I'm curious what you've seen in terms of IBM's culture and the things that are being done within IBM to kind of continue the momentum and keep things going rather than kind of sit back and enjoy that position it's had over the years.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have a choice, and I'll let my colleagues also do color commentary. We do not have a choice. In 2008, 2009, we saw it coming, and we've made dramatic changes to the corporation. You can see just in my apparel. But we try to stay close to the university, just like the Selectric typewriter, which was actually driven by academia, right, if you guys remember that. The whole concept on services. So we do try to collaborate, whether it's in Silicon Valley, the Research Triangle, or Penn State. We try to keep close to the next generation. We try to see the innovations, and it's your traditional from basic research to applied research, but we're listening more intently because of the social media capabilities. The dark data, we of course acquired weatherdata.com, and there's a lot of implications you see, but I think the closer, again, three things, we can connect with the content and collaborate with individuals like you, the better it is our response time to innovation. It's called Little's Law. So that means, essentially, so if you really look at the leading and lagging indicators of IBM, if I'm this far away from you, I can't really see the innovation. If I get closer to your students and yourself, I know exactly what's coming. So you'll see IBM, again, why Rich was here locally and why these individuals were coming closer to you. But to me, it's all about proximity and being able to act with the right skills. Great question. It is across the board. There has been no regional barriers. There hasn't been age barriers, gender barriers. The innovation is sitting out there. Again, on specifically the network optimization that you saw, 98% of the market is still open for innovation, especially instead of just building a product or providing a service or just creating the technology, the ability to network and talk and actually connect is crucial today, right? So when you walk away, especially the juniors and seniors, you've got to start thinking, I've got to approach the market, my career, my job, totally different. And you can't disconnect from academia, right? The study that you saw on the more education, that means the more content. So walk away and make sure that you understand that aspect of it.
Ben, I want to ask a question myself. Wonder if you could, I know this is an entrepreneurial focus, wonder if you could talk a little bit about the disruption that's occurring around the technology called blockchain.
This blockchain is a general ledger. It's immutable. That means once it writes to it, everybody gets a copy of it, right? It's the whole Bitcoin exchange. But that is one of the fastest growing areas. It's been on Fortune magazine. If you look at any channel, even today or this weekend, blockchain's a new technology where it's a distributed ledger, right? Once you write on it, it permanently writes on it. So, for example, a house. Today, a building like this, if it was built 50 years ago, you generally lose the papers. Even if you have it on a system, it's only accessible through maybe the staff or the engineering or through the operations. It's very expensive to scale it. Now with the new blockchain technology, it allows everybody in this room to actually track what exactly Ben said, how I handed it to you, how you handed it to Clay, and it's a wonderful technology. It was used, again, for financial transactions. But what we discovered is that blockchain isn't just meant for financial transactions, right? Because there's 4 flows in all of our life. There's the cash flow, there's the inventory flow, there's the workflow, and then there's the information flow. The thing that blockchain is so intriguing about, it's combining all the flows, and all of us see transparently what that transaction means. Maersk has done it already. Almost every transportation company in the world today, institutions, academia is looking at it. In fact, one of your professors is looking at blockchain for monitoring what the city is doing, right? How are you expending energy? How are you expending water? And it's not there for a surveillance system. It's there to optimize what's out there at a lower cost and faster response time. But blockchain's phenomenal.
I just wanted to mention, as you're thinking about maybe more questions, one of the things we're trying to do, so Ben mentioned this whole idea of partnership and getting closer to those that have the expertise, right? Think of it this way. You as students, there's no one closer to the challenges that you have here in a higher educational institution. You guys understand the challenges better than anybody because you're the student, but you're also, I'll put you into the category, you're the customer, right? You're the ones that, you're receiving the service that Penn State's providing. So as part of this partnership, what we're trying to do, so those of you that raised your hand said you actually have ideas of challenges you might solve. That's why the EdTech Network is launching, or has this program called the Nittany AI Challenge, and it's going to be, we're going to be receiving ideas from anybody that wants to participate in that challenge on January 22nd. But I wanted to let you know tonight at Happy Valley Launchbox, right? Happy Valley Launchbox? Yep. There's going to be an ideation session, so students are welcome. In fact, we want to get as many students to that ideation as possible. And basically what we're going to talk about are some potential ideas around improving the student experience in higher ed, and what we're trying to do is stimulate those ideas so that you might have some ideas that you could enter into the Nittany AI Challenge. And that's where you can use IBM Watson technology. You can build prototypes. There's going to be funding at 3 different levels. So there's going to be funding at a prototype level. We're going to be providing $2,500 per team. You know what? And people sitting in the room, just because you might not be the technical person, doesn't mean you're not a valuable person on that team. You might be the person that understands design. You may be the person that provides input on the user experience. You may not have that technical. That's okay. Or you're the entrepreneur type that's going to say, hey, there's a real market for this, and you're the type that could work on putting together a plan. So don't count yourself out just because you're not technical. But that's just, I just wanted to mention that challenge, the Nittany AI Challenge, and the ideation session tonight, because we're doing these programs to try to help give students the ability to work with both Penn State as a whole and bring in IBM as the partner and trying to give you a platform and actually some cash if you have a good idea in terms of taking your idea to market. So I told you the first level was $2,500 for prototype. The second level is $5,000 to help you take that prototype to a minimal viable product, an MVP. And then the last prize is a pool of $50,000, and we're going to distribute that $50,000 based on the types of ideas that could come out of that. It could be a research idea. It could be a solution for Penn State that Penn State might want to use itself, because just as Ben has been talking about in his presentation, this isn't innovation for innovation's sake. We're trying to solve real problems, right? Real challenges. And then the third component is a potential startup idea. So maybe two student team forms and you have a startup idea. Well, we want to help you take that to the next level. And just to take a peek at one of the startup ideas that came out of the Nittany Watson Challenge last year, you can check out Colinote.io. I think it's IO, I think is what they used for the extension.
Oh, that's phenomenal, guys. That's a true innovation. And I'll add something else to Darren. Just because you don't have an idea, still attend, because it's going to spark other ideas.
Good point. Very good point. Yeah. Just come and listen. You don't have to say anything if you don't want to. Just come and check it out and see what the ideation session's all about. But I just wanted to mention that. Again, tonight, 6 o'clock, Happy Valley Launchbox.
Do that for yourself, if anything else, right? I don't want to see these great minds not be able to leverage the opportunity here. This is not something that it's every college campus, much less every city, with the infrastructure, with Darren, with the EdTech Network. It just doesn't happen. Leverage this opportunity. Again, even if you just visit to see what the opportunity is, it could literally spark an idea in maybe 24 hours, 40 hours, or instantaneously. Or even the way you approach your own idea. A wealth of information. Network, right? Network, network, network. It's no longer good enough just to build a product.
Hi. You talked a lot about like Alexa and personal assistants like Siri. I'm wondering what's stopping Watson from being on everybody's smartphones or things like that, because I feel like Watson's a much bigger and smarter system than something like Siri. Why isn't it already on our phones?
You know, that's a lot has to go into it. And I was telling them, you know, it has to do with a lot of factors, right? Market reach, politics, economics, social capabilities, and technical capabilities. But we're also looking at as one of the first things, in order to connect, it's got to be a hybrid platform. Our intention isn't to wipe out Siri or substitute. In fact, the kids there, they actually use both Alexa and Siri and Watson to talk to each other to generate ideas. What we want Watson to be part of is the whole ecosystem to actually move the community forward. But the great question is, well, what prevents Watson from being prevalent? Everybody has their components, but it's the integration, right? We all don't just drive a Volkswagen. We all just don't take Uber, and we all just don't take a train, right? It's a combination of different AI technologies, and that's what IBM is trying to promote. But not saying that Watson wouldn't be a critical component of all of them, but we've got to see it happen, right? We need individuals like you to say, where does it really fit, right? Because you can't take Uber everywhere, and you can't ride your bike everywhere, right? Especially if you go overseas. If you know something I don't know, please let me know. But so, you know, it's a part of basic research to commercialization to test and evolving that circle. But great question. We're not looking for world domination, right? We're looking for solutions, which Darren alluded to.
Hey, so what are, I guess, some of the not challenges, but some of the biggest reasons that you see a lot of these young companies failing, especially with a new technology like this? And even though like it is, you guys make it very accessible for students to learn, like the IBM Tech, what stops people from being successful?
Now, I'll give you my Ben Amaba's empirical knowledge, but there's other studies on it, actually by Penn State, Phil LaPlante. The three largest ones that prevents them from doing it, besides not having a system, not having energy, and not having positive intent, very technical. The requirements aren't specified good enough, meaning requirements weren't SMART. And the way you can remember this is SMART actually stands for an acronym. It wasn't specific enough. You wanted a mobile phone. We'll be more specific. Was it measurable? How many phones would I really sell? Was it auditable? If you said you were going to sell 50 phones. Could I actually audit that you sold 50 phones? How do I know you didn't sell 5,000? That the asset was reusable. That means you could take it over to California and say, hey, look at this product. You can touch and feel it. And the final thing is traceability. Where was its origins? How did you manufacture it? Because if you don't understand that, on the third element, they couldn't respond because they didn't know where it came from. So the number one thing that I see, and then I'm going down into details, is requirements. The requirements weren't good enough to go through the whole life cycle. The second one is the design. It was a napkin versus an architecture or model. And the third element is you didn't test it enough tests. You didn't give it in the hands of this individual and this individual. You didn't test it for wear, reliability, resilience. So as you look at it, first you got to step back and say, do I have a system, right? Do I have positive intent? And do I have enough energy to push this all the way through? That's the first level of where people fall down. The second level, once I get this close, is my requirement smart? Can I model and architect it? And can I test it through the entire life cycle? So as you step back, design your system, at minimum, you need requirements, the model and architecture, and a testing system. And then you can bring the positive intent and the energy needed to pull it off. And I'll be honest with you, on this first level, most of the people just run out of gas. They give up. You hear it in all the Napoleon Hill, everything you read from Tony Robbins, they just don't have the energy to get it going.
And actually, I wouldn't mind just giving you my 2 cents. So I did start, I didn't really introduce myself, but I did start as the director of the EdTech Network at the beginning of this year, but I've been an entrepreneur all my life. I actually helped start a company here in State College. I went to Penn State undergrad, graduated at the age of, 22, started a venture-backed company here in town as part of a professor that was leaving the university, and it happened to be an IBM GIS, Geographic Information System project. But I'll tell you, throughout my career, I've started several companies. I would say a couple of the reasons I've seen other companies fail is, one, they lose focus. So they start with one intent, but along the way they kind of lose their focus and they think, well, if I make it bigger, I make it bigger. People tend to think if I broaden what I'm doing, that's going to increase my chance of success. A lot of times it does the opposite, because then by broadening what you're doing, you're weakening your value proposition. So I always try to tell people, focus, focus, focus. And if you can even get a more narrow focus, you might think, oh wait, that's limiting my opportunity, but it's actually doing the opposite. It's increasing your value prop. The other thing I would say too is, and this may sound like they're contradicting themselves a little bit, but don't be afraid to pivot. And I know that's an overused word, especially in entrepreneur circles. Pivot, pivot, pivot. It just means, hey, you know what? Yeah, I started with this original idea, but you can't be married to it to the point where it dies. I can tell you, Airbnb went through several iterations until they figured out what their business model was. And we were talking earlier, I've seen a lot of business models over my career. And I think if you're not afraid to get out there and share your business model with others and take that honest critique, and it might help you pivot, it might help you find what that successful model is. And I can't tell you how many startups I see today in terms of biggest reason for failure. I look at these business models, and we were just talking about this morning. I'm like, okay, you're toast, you're toast, you're toast. Why? Because they didn't think about how AI was going to impact their model. And I'm telling you, AI and other technologies, blockchain, I mean, wearable technology, there's so many technologies that are coming onto the market that are going to change business models. I wish I was in your seat. Man, I wish I was a student today and going out with, there's going to be so much opportunity, it's ridiculous. There's going to be so much disruption. And the question is just, do you guys have an idea on how you can combine a market need with new technology that changes the business model, and now you can add value? And you've got examples in front of you. You got the Airbnb, you got the Ubers. Now those are huge, right? Not everyone's going to be huge, but hey, you had an idea that could make you, bring a cool 20 million in a year. That's not too bad, right? And I think there's a lot of examples out there that nobody talks about, right? No one's going to talk about the $20 million company down the road and they're living a great lifestyle. We all talk about the big multi-billion-dollar, but there's plenty of other opportunities, and I would just encourage everyone. You're at a young age that you can just go for it, and you don't have a lot to lose. Just go for it.
So a lot of what we're talking about revolves around like technology, but what if you come not from a STEM background?
Oh, I think it goes back to what he was saying. These companies don't necessarily have that STEM background. You can outsource that. We were talking over here. I think everybody kind of thinks, hey, do I know the physical sciences? Meaning, hey, I kind of know how things work. But one of the most elusive ones that I find that a lot of the people in the arts that have the understanding and the concept of social sciences, they're the winners because they understand exactly what's going on. So when you look at these interdisciplinary teams, they're coming across whether it's STEM related, whether it's language arts, whether it's psychology, we talked about that. These teams are very diverse. It isn't the systematic constraint teams you see in technology 10, 15 years ago. So I wouldn't limit that at all. You can make a process change. Usually those aren't technically driven. And by the way, the process change that's generally coming out of non-technical degrees makes an 8% impact, while the technology by itself only makes a 2% impact on productivity. So again, don't limit yourself. You could be one of the greatest person to build channels, right? Channels on Uber was one of the biggest things. They were non-technical. So again, there is no prescriptive person characteristics that prevent you from innovating. So not one, I haven't seen it yet. You got a 6-year-old. You can't tell me he's more technically competent than you. It's impossible, right? But great question. This is open to everybody. And now, and by the way, IBM has actually made some of the user interfaces where specifically you don't have to be technical. The services are drag to drop. In fact, voice to text and text to voice is literally drag to drop. You don't have to code anything in the Watson services. If you want to do personality insight that takes your thesis or your report, you literally copy and paste, and it tells you your own personality. If you can turn that to your students or your professor, the way they turn in or what's their connotation or intent, you could literally make an app so your professor goes, hey, I can tell you the personality of everybody in your room before they come because of their applicants. That could be a service that requires really no technical background. It's a drag and drop service. And that's what's happening. Containers, APIs, and even I noticed the kids were programming in something called Scratch. There was no code in there. It was a drag and drop. A little cat, you want the cat to dance, you drag and drop. All right, so this is on an enterprise level. You want the cat to dance and you want to charge somebody for it, let's put it on an enterprise level that can reach the whole world. Great question. Does it have to be technical now? In fact, most schools are calling it STEAM, science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. And somebody wants to put another M for medical. So this is open to everybody.
So thank you, Ben, very much. We appreciate it. Thanks, everybody, for attending.